Greetings everyone, it's Garnet Schulhauser here, and I am a level 2 QHHT practitioner. Now QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, and it's a hypnosis modality developed over many years by Dolores Cannon. Now in a QHHT session, the client is induced into the deepest level of trance, known as the theta level. And every QHHT session has two parts to the trance. And the first part is a past life regression, and the second is contact with the client's higher self to get the answers to the questions that the client brings with them to the session. Now, if you'd like more information about QHHT and what it entails and what it can do for you, please visit my website, which is Garnet Schulhauser, QHHT.com. And there's more information that can be found there, and the address again will be listed on the final panel to this video. Now, before we get to the serious topic for today, I have a funny story to relay to you that I recently heard. It seems that one day a man went to his doctor and complained that he was not able to do many of the things around the house that he used to do. Well, the doctor examined him, and when the examination was finished, the man said, "Okay, doc, in plain English, what's wrong with me?" Well, the doctor said, "In plain English, you're just lazy." And the man nodded, and he said, "Okay, doc, can you give me the medical term for that so I can explain it to my wife?" Anyway, now to the serious business of this video. I'm going to relate to you one of the past lives that was very interesting that one of my clients had. Now, in the past life regression in a QHHT session, clients can be regressed to one or more past, parallel, or even future lives. And their past lives can be as a human on planet Earth, or as another animal on planet Earth, or even as an alien life form on another planet. And these past lives are chosen for the client to give them some relevance to their current life, usually, although that is not always the case. Now, in this one situation, I'm going to tell you about a man came to me for a session, and he easily went into a very deep trance. And when he came off of the cloud, he found himself standing on a dusty dirt street in a frontier town in the American Old West. And he was wearing cowboy boots, leather chaps, a checkered shirt, and a black Stetson. And more importantly, he had a gun belt strapped to his waist that had a holster containing his six-shooter. He said he was facing a surly cowboy on the street who was demanding that he engage my client in a gunfight. Now, my client was not strangers to gunfights because he was basically a drifter who traveled from town to town in the frontier west, playing poker and just hanging out. And this often resulted in him getting into gunfights when people who lost at the poker table would accuse him of cheating and demand revenge by shooting him in a gunfight. But my client had killed several men in this regard because he was really quite a fast draw. And my client was very proud of his ability to quickly draw and shoot his six-shooter. Now, the guy he was facing had challenged him to a gunfight because he claimed that my client had killed one of his friends unfairly. Now, my client was never one to run away from a gunfight. And despite the fact he didn't know what person this man was referring to in terms of his friend, he just decided, well, okay, if you're going to challenge me to a gunfight, I'm there. So the two of them were squared off. And all of a sudden, my client noticed that everything seemed to be covered in a gray mist. It's sort of like almost like a dome had dropped over the two of them, that they were standing there all alone, surrounded by this gray mist. And my client noticed that everything seemed to move in slow motion. So my client was watching in this slow motion kind of theater that he was in, and watched as the cowboy opposing him pulled out his six-shooter, aimed it at my client, and pulled the trigger. He did this in a split second before my client was able to draw his own gun and fired back. So my client stood there watching this bullet in slow motion slowly approach him. Eventually, it was aimed at his chest, and eventually the bullet reached his chest. Now, just before the bullet penetrated his chest, my client left his body and was hovering above the whole scene, watching it like he was watching a movie. He said he felt very detached. He didn't feel any emotion about what he was watching, and he understood that he was dying in a fair gunfight, and he expressed no anger or need for revenge against the guy who had shot him. He had lost in a fair fight. Well, the bullet pierced his chest and made a small round hole with some blood oozing out. And then his body fell to the dusty street. Now, as the bullet pierced my client's chest and he's hovering above it watching all of this, he said he felt no pain or discomfort. And as I mentioned before, he said it was like he was watching a movie, and he felt no emotion whatsoever about what was happening to his cowboy body. Well, he watched as the caretaker came along, dumped his body into the back of a wagon, and headed off to the cemetery. Then my client noticed that there were two spirits hovering nearby him. One was dressed like an elegant lady in medieval Europe, while the other looked like a World War I soldier. They told him they were his spirit guides, and they were coming to take him to the spirit side. So they enveloped him in warm, loving hugs, and he went with them up through the clouds towards a very bright light. As my client was rising up towards the light with his spirit guide escorts, he said he felt an amazing sense of peace, security, and well-being, and he felt like he was surrounded by pure, unconditional love. Well, when my client came out of the trance, he then said he now knew why, that for ever since he could remember, he had a round red birthmark on his chest. And that birthmark was exactly where the bullet had entered his chest when he was living the life as the cowboy. So he now understood where that came from, and he was thankful that he had been able to see his life as that cowboy, and that he now better understood the cycle of reincarnation on Earth, and he was happy to have be able to view that one life he had, even though it had ended tragically for him by being killed in that gunfight. Well, that's just one of many amazing stories I've heard when my clients go into past life regression. This is just one of them. I have relayed many other stories on my YouTube channel, and I will continue to do so because I find them very interesting. And I think that a lot of people watching the videos are reassured by the fact that when these people have these past life regressions, it clearly proves beyond a doubt that reincarnation is real, and that all of us have probably had many previous lives in different situations. And it also reaffirms that, guess what, there is life after death. Well, that's all for now, folks. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your journey, and remember to keep on dancing.